Well, this year's heat wave is doing more than just making Americans hot. We'll be sweating it out in the grocery store over the rising cost of food long after the weather cools off.
And Pat, the drought is killing important crops like corn, and it's going to make other foods like meat more expensive too. Ephraim Graham has a story.
It's the drought that never ends. Farmers say rains over the weekend did little to ease the stress of the heat and drought on their crops. And with little change in the weather predicted, they're expecting the worst come harvest time.
We had the table set for a really good crop, and the rain shut off.
This has been the hottest, driest summer that I can remember. Now, my father says that 1936 was drier, but then I was only 2 years old then. 1,500 counties in 32 states have been declared disaster areas. This means farmers and ranchers in those areas are eligible for federal aid. That includes low-interest emergency loans, 3.8 million acres more grazing land, and a grace period on insurance premiums due. The Obama administration is working to find even more ways to help farmers hit hard by the drought. The president authorized $30 million more in drought aid.
This has been an all-hands-on-deck response. Obviously, we've got a lot more to do because a lot of folks are being affected by this.
The hardest hit crops are corn and soybean. Shortages are driving up prices, and so is ethanol production. The EPA requires ethanol to be added to gasoline. About 40% of U.S. corn is used to make ethanol. Lawmakers say that's causing higher prices. All this has a ripple effect on the meat industry. Farmers are cutting down their herds as the cost of grain to feed the animals rises.
We're going to produce in the U.S. Roughly a billion fewer pounds of beef. That's about a 4% decline in 2012 versus last year.
And as farmers in every industry are forced to pay more and produce less, consumers will see a price increase at the grocery store. The cost of beef, dairy, chicken, and bakery products are all expected to rise. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, I understand in New England that this is the hottest summer since records have been kept, and so it's really tough. And people have talked about global warming, and many of us have laughed at their speculations, but it does seem that something is affecting our weather, and it is hot as blazes and doesn't seem to be letting up, especially in the Midwest.
I was just saying earlier when we walked in, I was like, you know what? I feel like I've missed the summer because it's been so hot. You don't want to play outside. You don't want to go to the beach. You don't want to do the normal activities that you would normally do in the summertime. It's like just stay home in the air conditioning and chill out.
And produce fun programs for singles.
That's true.
Well, Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom. Lee.
Pat, the Tea Party will have another candidate vying for a Senate seat this November. Representative Todd Akin won the Republican primary in Missouri last night. He will face incumbent Senator Claire McCaskill, the Democrat, in the general election. Akin played up his Tea Party credentials and gained the support of former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. He beat two other candidates, including Sarah Palin's choice, State Treasurer Sarah Steelman. Missouri voters also approved a state constitutional amendment allowing public prayer. The ballot measure allows prayer before government meetings. It also lets people pray in public as long as they don't disturb the peace. The measure also gives students the right to opt out of school assignments that violate their religious beliefs, and it requires schools to post the U.S. Constitution as well as the Bill of Rights. A proposed tax increase on the wealthy in France could trigger an exodus from that country. New Socialist President Francois Hollande is promising to impose a 75% tax rate on income over $1.25 million a year. A French attorney tells the New York Times that successful business executives are thinking about getting out of the country. So are young people earning around $250,000 a year. One accountant says politicians don't seem to understand that if taxes go too high, people will simply move. A real estate manager, though, in Belgium says the tax idea is ridiculous for France, but good for his country. Pat, he anticipates people and businesses will move to Belgium, create jobs, and spend money in that neighboring country.
You know, this is the Obama plan. Hit the millionaires, and I'm going to balance the budget when I tax millionaires. You see him going around the country advertising. This is utter nonsense. because the share of the GDP that a millionaire tax will raise is minuscule. But what it'll do is disrupt those who are the creators of successful business and the engines of economic growth. And when they can take their money and leave, especially in France. I talked to a Frenchman some years ago. I'll never forget. He was paying close to 100% in taxes. They had taxes on the shares of stock. They had taxes on real estate. They had taxes on business. They had taxes on employment. They just had a multitude of taxes. And I said, why don't you go down to Monte Carlo where there are no taxes? He said, well, I'm a Frenchman. I've been born in France and I owe my allegiance to my country. Well, that's noble. But I think at this point they're going to say, well, nobility only goes so far, and we're out of here, and it's going to happen. You know, capital comes where it is welcomed, and it goes where it is not welcome, and it will leave France in droves. Lee.
Bad cases of flesh-eating bacteria have received big headlines in recent months. The number of cases is relatively small, but the effects are so dramatic and often deadly that it bears our attention. Lori Johnson has the story now of one victim facing a tough battle.
Ruben Pereira is grateful doctors recognized he was infected with flesh-eating bacteria before it was too late.
Clock was ticking. You know, they're saying this looks very serious, where it's life-threatening, so we have to send you out now.
In America, only about 750 people are infected with flesh-eating bacteria each year, but it kills about a third of them.
Flesh-eating bacteria, and I can just, my mind is like, oh my God.
Ruben's case was typical. A minor cut allowed the bacteria to get inside his body. Then it destroyed the nearby skin, tissue, and muscle. In some cases, the bacteria gets in the bloodstream and spreads throughout the entire body. Doctors in Seattle administered IV antibiotics to Ruben and cut off many of the infected areas.
They had to take away my muscles, my tendons for the top, and they were just scraping away as much as they had to get rid of the bacteria. 3
of Ruben's fingers are at risk of becoming infected and might have to be amputated.
Every day we have to do this.
The infection has kept Ruben from working his regular bus driving job the last couple of months.
Probably have to sell, you know, whatever I got to try to survive.
Ruben's sister is reaching out for help through a Facebook page.
Most importantly, they want prayers, they want well wishes, they would love to have some financial support.
Meanwhile, although it's already rare, you can do even more to protect yourself from this infection, like immediately washing an open wound with warm soapy water and keeping it clean. Also, if the pain seems more severe than the injury warrants, see a doctor soon to prevent the bacteria from spreading. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
In London, China still has a narrow lead over the U.S. in the Olympics medal count, 73-70 now. The U.S. is hoping to regain that lead in the last few days of the Games. U.S. gymnast Aly Raisman won an individual gold in the floor exercise. She took the bronze on the balance beam. Gabby Douglas and Jordan Weber came away empty-handed in those events. In the women's 100-meter hurdles, American Dawn Harper took the silver medal. Teammate Kelly Wells finished third and won the bronze. Meanwhile, the U.S. is guaranteed gold and silver in women's beach volleyball. That's because both U.S. teams have advanced to the final. You know, many successful Olympians turn their newfound fame into big endorsements and big cash. But one U.S. athlete says he simply wants to use his new platform to share the gospel. Jacob Wookie is part of the U.S. men's archery team that won a silver medal.
You just kind of meet some of the other medalists that they have there at the time. And yeah, it's neat to meet, you know, people who are a little more well-known, but also you know, I'm hoping to be able to, you know, have maybe more opportunities to kind of speak and share Christ with people.
By the way, that interview comes to CBN from our partners, Athletes in Action. Wookie also told them on their website, archery has been a very big part of what I do, but my identity is in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Pat, back to you.
Well, we commend our athletes. I tell you that from a rating standpoint, the NBC has scored a great triumph. This summer has been, they've just dominated sports. The opening ceremony is 40% of the audience, 40 share went to NBC. It's just amazing. Have you been watching?
I have, and I think that's why all of us are walking around fatigued, because normally I go to bed 9, 10 o'clock, but it's like we're staying up till midnight saying, who's going to win, who's going to get it? And I tell you what, it becomes so stressful because I'll start watching it, and then I'm like, go, go, go!
Well, I'm not that stressed. When it comes to Chinese divers, it just turns me off. I mean, they're good, they're tremendous, and they're going to get the gold, and good for them, but I don't want to watch them. All right.
Oh, but I have to admit, I vicariously live myself through the track and field, folks.
Okay.
The head of the largest Catholic men's organization says Catholic voters have a duty to oppose candidates who support abortion rights and restrictions on the church's religious freedom. Carl Anderson leads the Knights of Columbus. He's taking on the White House over the so-called birth control mandate. Anderson says it's wrong for the government to force employers to provide coverage for drugs and treatments that they consider immoral. Another attack against a church in central Nigeria. This time, 19 people died when gunmen stormed the Deeper Life Evangelical Church and opened fire on a prayer meeting. Authorities are searching for the attackers who allegedly fled into the woods. Officials say no one has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the radical Islamic group Boko Haram has admitted to attacking several churches this year in Nigeria. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.